Subscribe now. Hit bell for political chaos. The NBC News studio buzzed with the kind of electric tension that only comes when a political earthquake is about to shake the very foundations of American politics. What was supposed to be a routine Senate campaign interview was about to become the moment when a sitting U.S. senator's arrogance collided with strategic brilliance, generating one of the most devastating three-word responses in modern political history. The mahogany table gleamed under studio lights as veteran journalist Gabe Gutierrez prepared to moderate what would become Senator John Cornyn's political obituary, delivered with surgical precision by a woman who was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones politicians dismiss as gifts. The backstory to this moment of complete political destruction began weeks earlier when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett shocked the Texas political establishment by announcing her Senate campaign just hours before the filing deadline. The timing wasn't accidental. It was calculated political warfare designed to maximize chaos among Republicans, while positioning herself as the strategic mastermind capable of turning Texas blue for the first time in decades. Hey everyone, before we dive into the most brutal political takedown of 2025, smash that subscribe button right now, because you absolutely do not want to miss these moments when political arrogance meets devastating reality. We're about to witness how 3 simple words can end a Senate career and expose exactly why traditional Democratic strategies keep failing. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever seen someone get completely destroyed by their own overconfidence? Senator John Cornyn entered 2025 feeling invincible. The 73-year-old Republican had served Texas in the Senate since 2002, surviving multiple election cycles through a combination of name recognition, conservative positioning, and the kind of institutional advantages that had made Texas seemingly impregnable for Democratic challengers. His confidence wasn't entirely misplaced. Texas Republicans had dominated statewide races for decades, turning back challenges from high-profile Democrats like Beto O'Rourke and Colin Allred, despite massive fundraising and national media attention. But Cornyn's sense of security was about to be shattered by factors completely outside his control. The 2026 election cycle had created a perfect storm of Republican vulnerability. Most significantly, Cornyn found himself facing primary challenges from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt, 2 MAGA loyalists who viewed him as insufficiently loyal to Trump's agenda. The Republican primary promised to be brutal, forcing Cornyn to spend millions defending his conservative credentials while moving further right to appease Trump supporters. Political observers understood this primary fight would leave the eventual nominee damaged and financially depleted. What Cornyn apparently failed to grasp was how fundamentally the political landscape had shifted since his last competitive election. Texas demographics had been changing rapidly, with growing suburban populations of college-educated voters who had shown increasing skepticism toward Trump-style Republican politics. The 2024 elections had demonstrated that these voters were willing to cross party lines when presented with compelling alternatives to inflammatory conservative rhetoric. If you are learning about political strategy right now, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe, because we break down exactly how these strategic miscalculations happen at the highest levels of politics. Comment below, do you think Cornyn should have seen this threat coming? Into this volatile environment stepped Jasmine Crockett, whose entry into the Senate race represented everything that traditional political establishments, both Republican and Democratic, feared most: an authentic voice armed with viral communication skills, strategic intelligence, and the kind of preparation that had already made her legendary among political observers who understood the difference between performance and substance. Crockett's timing was perfect, and her strategic analysis was devastatingly accurate. Unlike previous Democratic Senate candidates in Texas who had relied primarily on traditional campaign methods and mainstream media coverage, she brought a completely different approach built around direct communication, viral content creation, and the kind of political authenticity that resonated powerfully with voters exhausted by scripted political theater. The numbers behind her confidence were staggering and would soon become central to understanding why Cornyn's dismissive attitude was such a catastrophic miscalculation. As Crockett would reveal in her NBC interview, her internal polling showed her absolutely competitive against any Republican opponent, with name recognition and favorability ratings that surpassed those of previous Democratic challengers at similar stages of their campaigns. More importantly, she had built what she described as a layered communications ecosystem that gave her unprecedented reach across multiple demographic groups that traditional campaigns struggled to access. Her claim that she had more followers on YouTube than anyone else in the House or Senate wasn't just campaign bluster, it represented a fundamental advantage in modern political communication that establishment politicians like Cornyn simply didn't understand. The strategic advantages went beyond social media metrics. Crockett had spent months researching the failures of previous Democratic Senate campaigns in Texas, conducting detailed interviews with Colin Allred, Beto O'Rourke, and Stacey Abrams about lessons learned from closely contested red state campaigns. This preparation gave her insights into tactical mistakes while identifying opportunities that hadn't been properly exploited. Share this video with everyone right now, because what happens next is political preparation, meeting establishment arrogance in the most devastating way possible. Hit that share button and tell your friends they need to see this complete political destruction. Comment below. Were you impressed by Jasmine's strategic preparation? But perhaps most dangerously for Cornyn, Crockett understood something about modern political dynamics that establishment politicians consistently missed. Authentic strength resonated more powerfully with voters than performative moderation. While traditional Democratic strategists advised candidates to moderate their positions and avoid controversial topics, Crockett had built her national profile by leaning into confrontational moments and demonstrating intellectual superiority over Republican opponents in high-stakes environments. Her viral confrontations with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and other Republican lawmakers hadn't been accidents or lucky moments. They were the result of meticulous preparation, strategic thinking, and the kind of authentic confidence that couldn't be manufactured through traditional campaign consulting. These moments had generated millions of views, massive fundraising spikes, and most importantly, demonstrated to potential voters that she possessed the skills necessary to outmaneuver Republican opponents in real-time political combat. When news of Crockett's Senate announcement reached Cornyn's campaign, their initial response revealed the kind of establishment thinking that was about to be completely destroyed. Rather than recognizing the strategic threat posed by a candidate with proven viral communication skills, extensive preparation, and growing national profile, Cornyn's team apparently viewed her entry as a political gift that would energize the Republican base while providing an easy target for attack ads. This fundamental misunderstanding of Crockett's capabilities and the changing nature of political communication was about to be exposed in the most public and humiliating way possible. When Semaphore reached out to Cornyn for comment on Crockett's candidacy, his response revealed levels of arrogance and strategic blindness that would soon become political suicide. The quote that would define Cornyn's downfall started with barely concealed glee. "Am I hiding my glee? I'll try to wipe the smile off my face." The image of a sitting United States senator openly celebrating what he viewed as an easy opponent suggested someone completely disconnected from the realities of modern political communication and voter sentiment. People, we are watching political psychology at its most revealing. If you are not subscribed to this channel yet, you are missing analysis that shows you exactly how these career-ending moments develop. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What do you think about politicians who celebrate their opponents? But Cornyn's dismissiveness got worse. "I would say it is a gift," he continued, apparently unaware that this comment would soon be used as evidence of the kind of establishment arrogance that voters had repeatedly rejected in recent election cycles. The idea that any opponent could be considered a gift revealed someone who had become dangerously overconfident in his own political security. The most damaging part of Cornyn's statement came when he attempted to draw distinctions between Crockett and previous Democratic challengers. Colin Allred obviously was successful before, but he was what I would call closer to a normal Democrat than Jasmine. She is something else. This comment revealed multiple strategic mistakes that would prove fatal to Cornyn's political standing. First, by acknowledging that Colin Allred had been successful despite losing his Senate race, Cornyn was inadvertently admitting that even unsuccessful Democratic challenges had created serious problems for Republican incumbents. Second, his reference to normal Democrats suggested that he viewed moderation as weakness, rather than recognizing that authenticity and competence might be more powerful electoral assets. Most catastrophically, his description of Crockett as something else was intended as dismissive criticism, but could easily be interpreted as acknowledging her unique political skills and capabilities. In trying to diminish her, he had actually highlighted exactly the qualities that made her a formidable opponent: her departure from traditional Democratic messaging, and her ability to generate viral moments that transcended typical campaign communications. When NBC News scheduled Crockett for their Meet the Candidate series, political observers understood they were about to witness either a moment of campaign triumph or complete political disaster. Crockett's track record in high-pressure media situations suggested the former. But the stakes of a Senate campaign created pressures that even experienced politicians sometimes couldn't handle. What nobody anticipated was how completely Crockett would dismantle not just Cornyn's dismissive comments, but the entire strategic framework that had allowed Republican politicians to dominate Texas politics for decades. Her performance in that NBC studio would become a masterclass in political communication, strategic thinking, and the kind of intellectual preparation that separated authentic political talent from mere campaign performance. Oh my God, are you ready for this complete destruction? Subscribe immediately, because we're about to witness the exact moment when 3 words end a Senate career. Comment below. Can you predict what Jasmine is about to say? This is political genius at its finest. Gabe Gutierrez opened the interview by focusing on Crockett's internal polling and strategic rationale for entering the race, giving her the perfect opportunity to demonstrate the kind of detailed preparation that establishment politicians consistently underestimated her. Response revealed someone who had approached the Senate race with the same methodical analysis she had used to dismantle Republican opponents in congressional hearings. Polling said I should run. She began with characteristic directness. Listen, polling for me was a benchmark to determine whether or not I was truly competitive. I will tell you that it showed that I am absolutely competitive, to the extent that some people are probably very concerned about the fact that I entered this race. The confidence in her delivery was striking. But it wasn't the empty bravado that characterized many political campaigns. This was someone presenting data-driven analysis with the same professional competence she had displayed in legal practice and congressional work. The comment about people being very concerned suggested that her internal numbers were strong enough to worry establishment politicians on both sides of the political divide. Gutierrez pressed her on what made her think she could succeed where previous Democratic candidates had failed, giving Crockett the opportunity to showcase exactly the kind of strategic thinking that Cornyn had apparently failed to recognize. Her response was a masterclass in political analysis that revealed months of detailed preparation and consultation with experienced campaign professionals. Something's a little different about me, she said with a slight smile that suggested confidence rather than arrogance. When I looked at everything, when I pored over historical data, when I talked to other candidates that have run statewide, from talking to Colin Allred to talking to Beto O'Rourke to examining kind of what all happened in those races, as well as talking to people like Stacey Abrams about what that looked like in Georgia, I came to the conclusion that there were a couple of things that could give us an advantage. The methodical nature of her preparation was obvious and impressive. This wasn't someone entering a Senate race based on ambition or opportunism, but rather someone who had conducted the kind of strategic analysis that successful campaigns require. Her consultation with Allred, O'Rourke, and Abrams showed both humility about learning from previous efforts and confidence about applying those lessons to create new strategies. This is incredible political strategy happening in real time. Hit that like button if you are impressed by this level of preparation. Share this video because everyone needs to see how authentic political intelligence actually works. What do you think gives Jasmine her biggest advantage? Her analysis of current political dynamics was equally sophisticated and devastating to Republican confidence. Number 1, this environment is a terrible environment for the Republicans, she explained, citing the extended primary battle that would weaken whoever emerged as the Republican nominee. Number 2, we know right now that they are going to be locked into a race, most likely until May. We've not seen them have to kind of go at it and fight for such a long amount of time. The strategic implications were obvious to anyone who understood campaign dynamics. While Republicans spent months and millions attacking each other, Crockett would have time to build her general election organization, refine her messaging, and prepare for a damaged opponent who would emerge from a brutal primary battle with limited resources and potentially extreme positions that would be difficult to moderate for general election voters. But her most important advantage was the one that traditional political establishments consistently failed to understand: the power of authentic communication and established name recognition. In an era where traditional media gatekeepers had lost much of their influence over political discourse. Historically, we start with a candidate who has a great resume, but unfortunately doesn't have necessarily the name ID, she explained. When we're talking about a $100 million race, that money has to be spent just so that people can start to learn that person's name and start to build a rapport, at least walking into this race. We know that our first dollars, they go to actually turning people out, and more so towards persuasion and expansion. This analysis revealed sophisticated understanding of campaign resource allocation that went far beyond typical political rhetoric. Most campaigns had to spend enormous amounts early just to establish basic name recognition, but Crockett's viral moments and strategic media presence had already solved that fundamental problem, allowing her to focus resources on voter persuasion and turnout operations that would be crucial in a competitive general election. When Gutierrez brought up Trump's obsession with attacking her, Crockett demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking that had made her so effective in viral confrontations. Rather than treating Trump's attacks as problems to be managed, she had reframed them as free advertising that expanded her name recognition among potential voters who might not otherwise learn about her candidacy. Before we get to the moment that destroys Cornyn's career, make sure you are subscribed because we analyze every aspect of these strategic communications. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Do you think Trump's attacks actually helped Jasmine? This is political jujitsu at its finest, obviously. The president saying my name also makes people say, well, who is Jasmine Crockett if they don't know who I am? She explained with the kind of strategic clarity that separated authentic political talent from campaign consultants reading focus group reports. So, that is definitely put it out there as well. Her analysis of her communications ecosystem revealed advantages that traditional politicians simply couldn't replicate. We've always done layered communications, she explained. It has been quite expansive, from radio to podcasts to news stations, local and national, as well as we've built our own ecosystem. Her most significant claim was verifiable. I actually have more followers on our YouTube channel than anyone else in the House or the Senate on YouTube. This represented a fundamental advantage in modern political communication that establishment politicians like Cornyn simply didn't understand. YouTube's algorithm rewarded authentic engagement and long-form content that demonstrated competence and preparation, exactly the qualities that Crockett had been demonstrating in her viral congressional moments. The reason that I specifically bring it up is because that is where a lot of people go for a lot of their information. She continued, so people will go and watch those longer-form videos of the work that I am doing. Whether we're talking about town halls, which I do those once a quarter, or I even send out weekly emails of everything that I've done in the district for the week. The systematic nature of her voter communication revealed someone who understood that modern political campaigns required direct relationships with voters, rather than relying solely on traditional media coverage that could be filtered, distorted by partisan outlets. As the interview progressed toward immigration policy and other substantive issues, Gutierrez eventually reached the moment that political observers had been anticipating. Cornyn's dismissive comments about her candidacy and whether she represented the kind of opponent that Republicans actually wanted to face. The question was straightforward, but loaded with political implications. Senator Cornyn reacted to your Senate campaign. He told Semaphore, "Am I hiding my glee? I'll try to wipe the smile off my face. I would say it is a gift." Colin Allred obviously was successful before, but he was what I would call closer to a normal Democrat than Jasmine. She is something else. What is your response? People, this is the exact moment when everything changes forever. Subscribe right now if you want to see how 3 words can end a political career. Drop a comment. What do you think Jasmine is about to say? Hit that share button because this is unprecedented political destruction. The studio fell silent as Crockett processed Cornyn's quote, her expression revealing someone who had anticipated this moment and prepared for exactly this kind of establishment dismissiveness. Political observers watching the interview understood they were about to witness either a defensive response that would validate Cornyn's criticism or a strategic counterattack that could redefine the entire race. What happened next was political perfection. Yeah. Well, you know what? Crockett began, her voice carrying the same calm authority that had made her congressional confrontations so devastating. She paused briefly, as if considering the full scope of Cornyn's arrogance and the decades of Republican dominance it represented. Then, with the same conversational delivery that had made "Can't Take the Heat" such a perfect political obituary from Marjorie Taylor Greene, she delivered 3 words that would haunt Cornyn's political career forever. Normal Democrats lose. The silence in the NBC studio was deafening. 3 words delivered with perfect timing and devastating accuracy. No dramatic emphasis. No aggressive tone. No obvious attempt to create a viral moment. Just a simple, undeniable observation that captured everything wrong with traditional Democratic strategy and everything powerful about Crockett's approach to Texas politics. The phrase, "normal Democrats lose," accomplished multiple strategic objectives simultaneously. It acknowledged the reality that moderate, establishment-approved Democratic candidates had consistently failed to win statewide office in Texas, despite massive investments and national attention. It positioned Crockett as someone willing to try different approaches, rather than repeating failed strategies. Most importantly, it reframed Cornyn's intended criticism as inadvertent validation of exactly the qualities that made her dangerous to Republican incumbency. Oh my God, are you seeing this political perfection? Subscribe to this channel immediately because we just witnessed the most devastating three-word counterattack in modern politics. Comment below, have you ever seen someone turn an insult into their greatest strength? This is political genius. But Crockett wasn't finished. Having delivered the perfect soundbite that would generate millions of views and news coverage, she expanded her analysis with the kind of substantive insight that would give political journalists and commentators additional material to work with, while reinforcing her central argument. Considering the fact that Democrats have been losing, I think that this is absolutely the fight that we need at this moment, she continued. Connecting her campaign to broader questions about Democratic strategy and messaging that resonated far beyond Texas politics, her assessment of Cornyn personally was equally strategic, acknowledging their previous cooperation on legislation, while highlighting how his dismissive comments represented a departure from the more collaborative approach that had characterized some of his past work. I also can tell you that it is quite disappointing that the senator has decided that he has to kind of tout this negative kind of persona in order to win over in his primary. This observation was particularly damaging because it highlighted how Cornyn's attacks on her were motivated by his own political vulnerability rather than genuine policy disagreements. By noting his previous willingness to work across party lines, she was positioning his current dismissiveness as political desperation rather than principled opposition. I can tell you that the senator, frankly, when there came down to certain things, he was a good partner. She continued, citing specific examples of bipartisan cooperation that made his current attacks appear even more politically calculated. I had legislation that I brought from the state level around fentanyl. He has been a partner on that legislation. I had legislation around food security. He has been a partner on that legislation. The strategic brilliance of this approach was obvious to political professionals watching the interview. Rather than responding to Cornyn's attacks with similar negativity, Crockett was highlighting his inconsistency while positioning herself as someone focused on substantive policy work rather than partisan point scoring. Her conclusion tied everything together with devastating precision. We actually had President Joe Biden sign a bill into law that was about transparency. He actually was more like a normal Republican than these times have called for. But I do think that in this current environment, we probably don't need a normal Democrat if we are going to do the normal thing like winning. The final phrase, "the normal thing like winning," was political poetry that captured everything powerful about Crockett's strategic thinking and everything wrong with traditional Democratic approaches to Texas politics. She had simultaneously acknowledged Cornyn's past reasonableness, while suggesting that current political realities require different approaches from both parties. This is insane political communication happening in real time. Hit that like button if you are watching this complete strategic destruction. Share this video because everyone needs to see how authentic political intelligence demolishes establishment thinking. What was your favorite part of this response? Within minutes of the interview concluding, clips of Crockett's "Normal Democrats Lose" response began spreading across social media platforms. The hashtag number "Normal Democrats Lose" started trending within 2 hours, generating over 2.8 million posts. TikTok reaction videos accumulated over 15 million views in the first 48 hours. The response perfectly illustrated strategic counterattack over defensive messaging. Rather than explaining why Cornyn was wrong, Crockett had reframed his criticism as evidence of exactly the qualities that made her capable of winning where others had failed. Third, the moment demonstrated the power of authentic political communication over scripted campaign messaging. Crockett's response felt spontaneous and genuine rather than focus group tested, creating the kind of authentic moment that resonated with voters exhausted by typical political rhetoric. Conservative media outlets found themselves in the awkward position of trying to defend Cornyn's dismissive comments while acknowledging the obvious accuracy of Crockett's assessment about Democratic performance in Texas. Some attempted to argue that her approach was too confrontational for general election voters, but this criticism struggled against her demonstrated ability to generate positive coverage and grassroots enthusiasm. The incident immediately influenced how other Texas Republicans approached discussions of Crockett's candidacy. The lesson was clear. Dismissive comments about her capabilities were more likely to generate viral moments that damaged the critic than to effectively diminish her political standing. For Cornyn personally, the aftermath was swift and devastating. His gift comment became a recurring theme in Democratic fundraising emails and social media content, while "Normal Democrats Lose" became a rallying cry that captured Democratic frustration with traditional campaign strategies that had consistently failed in red states. Share this analysis with everyone who needs to understand how modern political communication actually works. Hit that share button and tell your friends they need to see this masterclass in strategic messaging. Comment below. Do you think Cornyn realized he was walking into a trap? Political fundraising data revealed the immediate impact of Crockett's viral response. Democratic small-dollar donations to her campaign spiked by 340% in the 24 hours following the NBC interview, with many donors specifically citing the "Normal Democrats Lose" moment as their motivation for contributing. More significantly, several major Democratic donors who had previously been skeptical about investing in another Texas Senate race began reaching out to her campaign about potential support. The incident also generated significant interest from national Democratic organizations that had been hesitant to invest heavily in Texas races after previous disappointing results. Crockett's demonstration that she could turn Republican attacks into viral moments that generated positive coverage and fundraising suggested that she possessed exactly the kind of political skills that could make Texas competitive. For the first time in decades, congressional colleagues from both parties took notice of how effectively Crockett had handled what could have been a damaging moment. Republican members who had previously underestimated her political skills began approaching their own potential conflicts with her more carefully, understanding that she possessed an unusual ability to turn opponents' attacks into strategic advantages. For Democratic politicians struggling with similar challenges in red states, the "Normal Democrats Lose" response became a template for how to handle establishment criticism while positioning themselves as candidates capable of winning where traditional approaches had failed. The broader implications extended to Democratic primary strategy, where Crockett's response influenced how other candidates approached questions about their viability and electability. Rather than defending traditional Democratic messaging that had consistently failed in competitive environments, more candidates began highlighting their departures from conventional wisdom as evidence of their potential effectiveness. 6 weeks after the NBC interview, polling data revealed the lasting impact. Crockett's name recognition had increased by 28 points among likely Democratic primary voters, while her favorability rating showed significant improvement across demographic groups. More troubling for Cornyn, internal Republican polling reportedly showed that his dismissive comments had created an enthusiasm gap among Democratic voters who viewed the race as a potential opportunity to prove that something else could succeed, where normal approaches had failed. Before we wrap up this incredible analysis, make sure you are subscribed to this channel for political breakdowns that show you exactly how these career-defining moments work. Hit that like button if you think this was the perfect political response. Share this with anyone who needs to understand how authentic strength defeats establishment arrogance. What is your prediction for this Senate race? The long-term implications of this viral confrontation extended far beyond the immediate Texas Senate race to questions about Democratic strategy in red states. The power of authentic political communication and the effectiveness of establishment dismissiveness in an era where viral moments could instantly reshape political narratives. For political communication professionals, the incident became a case study in how prepared candidates could turn apparent weaknesses into strategic advantages through authentic responses that resonated with voters' actual concerns rather than focus group tested. Messaging designed to avoid controversy. Law schools and political science programs began incorporating the "Normal Democrats Lose" moment into coursework, examining effective political rhetoric, strategic communication under pressure, and the difference between defensive and offensive political messaging in high-stakes environments. As the 2026 election cycle progressed, one conclusion became increasingly clear. Senator John Cornyn's attempt to dismiss Jasmine Crockett as a gift had instead provided her with the perfect platform to demonstrate exactly the kind of political skills and strategic thinking that traditional politicians consistently underestimated to their own detriment. The phrase "Normal Democrats Lose" had become more than a viral moment. It was a political philosophy that captured the frustration of voters who wanted authentic representation rather than focus group-tested moderation that consistently failed to deliver electoral success or meaningful policy change. In trying to diminish Crockett through establishment dismissiveness, Cornyn had instead provided her with the opportunity to articulate a political vision that resonated powerfully with voters, exhausted by traditional approaches that prioritized avoiding offense over winning elections and implementing progressive policies. For Jasmine Crockett, the moment represented perfect validation of her strategic approach to political communication and campaign building. By staying authentic to her own political instincts rather than moderating for establishment approval, she had generated exactly the past kind of viral moment that expanded her reach while demonstrating her readiness for the strategic demands of Senate-level political combat. The transformation of Cornyn's intended dismissal into Crockett's strategic advantage provided a perfect example of how modern political dynamics had shifted away from traditional gatekeepers toward candidates who could directly connect with voters through authentic communication and demonstrated competence in high-pressure situations. All right, everyone. That is the complete breakdown of how Jasmine Crockett's 3 words, "normal Democrats lose," turned Senator Cornyn's arrogance into her greatest political advantage. What is your take on this incredible strategic communication? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this detailed analysis. And don't forget to subscribe because we cover every viral political moment that shapes our democracy. Share this with anyone who needs to see how authentic political talent defeats establishment dismissiveness.